In place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. For those online, please mute yourself when you are not speaking. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members online, please use the raised hand function. For interpretation online, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. Those in the room can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately, and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. I ask all participants to be careful when handling the earpieces in order to prevent feedback. Feedback can be extremely harmful to our interpreters and cause serious injuries. I invite participants to speak into the same microphone that their earpiece is plugged into and to place earpieces away from the microphone when they are not in use. So I want to welcome all of our representatives, our witnesses this morning, specifically Mr. Cote. It's nice to see you here in person today. So pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, October 17, 2023, the committee is resuming a study of Canada's proposed biocides regulations. We have with us from the Association for Development and Innovation, Andre Cote, member of the Board of Directors. From CropLife Canada, we have Gregory Colts, Vice President, Government Affairs, and Emily Bergeron, Vice President, Chemistry. From Food, Health, and Consumer Products of Canada, Jerry Harrington, Senior Vice President, Consumer Health. And from Flexo Products Limited, Stephen Parker, President and Chief Executive Officer. Welcome again to all of you. We will start with opening remarks, and we will then proceed with questions from the committee members. Monsieur Cote, I invite you to present for up to 5 minutes, please.
Bonjour.
Hello, and thank you. Before starting, I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to share my testimony after all the technical issues we had on Tuesday. I'm here as a regulatory expert and member of the Board of Directors of the CIIT. I've been working on product registration with the Canadian authorities for over 20 years. The proposed biocides regulations are not new. Since 2016, I myself have taken part with other associations in several preliminary meetings on the subject, at which Health Canada was already proposing to have recourse to foreign decisions for access to the Canadian market. Since 2016, CIIT and other industry associations have been voicing their disagreements with Health Canada's unrealistic implementation timetable for Canadian small enterprises. Overall, the draft biocides regulation aims to establish a new framework around certain product categories. It covers disinfectants and sanitizers for hard services. We are asking the industry to register products with a new approach which has never been done before. That is why we are currently asked to register products that are not currently registered. Since 2014, food contact surface sanitizers are no longer subject to pre-market assessment by Health Canada. The Canadian food safety regulations have eliminated the review previously required on these products. We know that at the time of the 2014 regulatory changes, there were 1,918 food contact surface sanitizers under review by Health Canada. Deregulation hasn't changed much in industrial practice. Surface sanitizers are still used in contact with food, but they do not need to be registered with Health Canada. In this context, no Canadian company doing business exclusively in Canada currently holds a registration. This is because the product category simply doesn't exist in Canada. When the proposed biocides regulations are implemented, we estimate there will be 700 to 800 food contact surface sanitizers registered. For decades in the United States, sanitizers for surfaces have been mandatorily registered. This means all companies headquartered in the U.S. or selling this type of product on the U.S. soil already hold approvals. When the regulations are implemented, this will allow U.S. registered products to enter the Canadian market without delay, to the detriment of Canadian manufacturers, the majority of whom are small businesses. This is dangerous for the international market equilibrium, and it would favor American products on Canadian soil. From a technical and regulatory point of view, Canada stands alone among the G7 countries. Contrary to previous claims, just because two regulatory processes use the same protocols to assess product efficiency, it doesn't mean that they are equivalent. Everywhere else in the G7, humans are treated with medication, for example, penicillin, and surfaces are treated with disinfectants, like bleach. Everywhere else in the G7, we have regulations for disinfectants and for medication. In Canada, the situation is different. In our country, we treat a table with a medicine to prevent an illness. Indeed, the Canadian definition categorizes bleach and penicillin as drugs or medication. This is under the Food and Drugs Act, and they are treated according to the same principles. That is why Health Canada's objective of harmonizing the situation is done through the proposed biocides regulations. Unfortunately, the draft regulations, as currently presented, are far from being comparable to other allegedly equivalent regulations in the U.S. or elsewhere in the G7. The regulation requires Canadian companies to comply with a framework that is new to Canada, but has been in use for many years in the U.S. and elsewhere in the world. As a result, Canadian manufacturers will have to produce a dossier to comply with a new regulatory framework and await Health Canada's decision. Meanwhile, the use of foreign decisions will allow the de facto entry into the country of products that are already approved at lower cost abroad. For IDIC, the only way for the Canadian government to be fair in applying the new biocides regulation would be to allow Canadian industry to comply with a new regulatory framework before authorizing the use of foreign decisions. In this context, our request for a moratorium of 2 to 5 years on the recourse of foreign decisions seems very reasonable and would enable Health Canada to determine whether or not a foreign authority is competent to support the registration of a biocide in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cote. Mr. Colts or Madame Bergeron, whoever would like to go forward, please, for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, and good morning, honourable members. My name is Gregory Coles, and I am Vice President, Government Affairs at CropLife Canada. I'm joined today by my colleague, Émilie Bergeron, Vice President, Chemistry. Both Émilie and I were very pleased to participate in this committee's recent study on non-tariff trade barriers, and we're equally happy to appear today as part of your current review of proposed biocides regulations and the potential trade impacts that these may have on certain Canadian sectors. CropLife Canada represents the Canadian manufacturers, developers, and distributors of pest control and modern plant breeding products. While our organization's primary focus is on providing tools to help farmers be more productive and more sustainable, our membership also develops products for use in a wide range of non-agricultural settings. These include urban green spaces, public health settings, and transportation corridors. Globally, biocides are sometimes classified as a type of pesticide. In some jurisdictions, the words biocides and pesticides are used interchangeably. For instance, the World Health Organization defines biocides as chemicals that kill pests, including insects, rodents, fungi, and unwanted plants. That said, as you heard from the government officials during your last meeting, Health Canada defines biocides as surface sanitizers, and disinfectants that are regulated under separate regulations in Canada. Currently, disinfectants are regulated under the Food and Drugs Act, while surface sanitizers fall under the Pest Control Products Act. While CropLife Canada's members do not manufacture biocides as defined in Canada, our interest in today's study is in the model this innovative regulation provides to the government in terms of how to make the regulatory system more efficient while ensuring the same level of protection is achieved for Canadians.
CropLife Canada se fait le champion d'un environnement réglementaire qui protège la...
CropLife Canada is championing a regulatory environment that both protects human and environmental safety and encourages innovation and competitiveness. We are advocating for science-based regulations, both federally and provincially, that allow farmers access to the latest tools they need to safely and sustainably grow our food and compete on a global stage. The proposed framework that is being examined by this committee aims to create a regulatory pathway for biocides within Health Canada that supports regulatory alignment, facilitates trade, reduces unnecessary regulatory burden, and encourages new infection prevention and control innovations to be brought to the Canadian marketplace. While CropLife Canada has not been directly involved in Health Canada's pre-consultations on this specific proposed framework, we are very much in favor of recommendations that support and further strengthen existing regulations, while at the same time reducing red tape, enhancing efficiency, and promoting greater access to innovative products for Canadians in the future. We strongly believe Canadian regulators can best protect market access and competitiveness by remaining science-based, focusing on safety, and being transparent about their decisions. To encourage regulatory reform efforts, CropLife Canada will continue to advocate for regulatory alignment with like-minded countries that share our science and risk-based approach to regulation and work to achieve similar levels of protection. In an environment where resources are limited and regulatory efficiencies are needed, we need to ensure innovative approaches like this one are promoted and facilitated in order to ensure the long-term sustainability of our regulatory system.
Again, it is worth noting that Canada is a net food exporter and the 5th largest agricultural exporter globally. We produce some of the highest quality and most sought-after products in the world. But we need predictable, transparent, and science-based trade rules with our major trading partners in order to get our products to market. As mentioned, CropLife Canada fully supports regulatory approaches that help create a more competitive business environment, facilitate trade, and remove barriers to market entry while ensuring they continue to protect the health and safety of Canadians and the environment. In order to grow crops sustainably and profitably, Canadian growers require access to plant science innovations such as crop protection products and modern plant breeding technologies. As is the case for biocides, a science-based, efficient regulatory system is the best way to achieve this objective. Thank you, honourable members, for inviting us to appear today. We appreciate this opportunity to share our perspective, and we look forward to taking any questions you may have. Merci.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Harrington for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, for this opportunity to provide Food, Health and Consumer Products of Canada's perspective on the proposed biocides regulations. The food, health and consumer products sectors employ nearly 300,000 Canadians in businesses of all sizes across the country that manufacture and distribute the safe, high-quality products that are at the heart of healthy homes, healthy communities, and a healthy Canada. FHCP strongly supports the proposed biocides regulations. The 2 key types of products captured by the proposed regulations, surface sanitizers and disinfectants, are currently governed under 2 separate pieces of legislation, the Food and Drugs Act and the Pest Control Product Act, and regulated by separate agencies. Given that these products have similar risk profiles and are used under similar conditions, this approach is cumbersome and inefficient for both government and industry. A single framework and regulator, as proposed under these regulations, is an important step forward for all, especially for consumers and taxpayers. The COVID pandemic underlined the importance of sanitizers and disinfectants to all Canadians, as well as the vulnerability of our supply of these products. Through the extraordinary efforts of Health Canada and a broad range of Canadian companies, those supplies were bolstered by virtue of an interim order by the Minister that allowed them to be authorized for sale in Canada based on foreign approvals. One of the key benefits of the proposed biocides regulations, in our view, is the creation of a permanent pathway for the use of decisions by trusted foreign regulators in authorizing products for sale in Canada. FHCP is very encouraged to see Health Canada apply the lessons learned during the pandemic to modernize the framework. The use of foreign decisions provisions will create more competition and innovation in the marketplace, increasing consumer choice, and in so doing, ease some of the inflationary pressure on these products. The UFD provisions do not compromise safety. For Canadian product approvals, the ambulatory list of trusted regulators whose decisions can be leveraged is limited to those whose approval criteria align with those of Health Canada. Since the supply chains for these products are generally North American in scope, it's natural that the United States Environmental Protection Agency is the first foreign regulator to appear on this list. But the regulations provide a process and pathway for other regulators to be qualified and to further increase the opportunities to reduce the amount of resources going to redundant reviews of the same safety information against the same criteria and generating the same outcomes. Once approved, these products will be subject to the same post-market oversight by Health Canada as all other licensed products. And should that post-market experience result in questions about the safety of a product, all of the authorities from Vanessa's law will be available to compel manufacturers to submit additional safety information, including the information submitted to the original foreign regulator. Now, given the absence of any compromise on consumer safety and other regulatory outcomes, the appropriate use of foreign decisions in product regulation offers a great opportunity to drive costs out of the system and increase competition. This would give consumers more choice and more competitive pricing at a time when the cost of living is a significant concern for so many. Canadian manufacturers can be very, very competitive. But many organizations, including the World Economic Forum, have noted a decline in our competitiveness and cite burdensome regulations as a principal cause of that decline. Regulatory modernization can have a dramatic impact on international competitiveness. In the decade that followed the introduction of the natural health product regulations in 2004, we saw exports of these products more than double in Canada to over $1 billion. That is a growth rate in exports more than double the overall average for Canadian manufacturing. This was because those new regulations were internationally recognized as being both robust and class-leading, and at the same time provided an efficient pathway for innovative products to reach market. Time will only tell whether the biocides regulations will have a similar effect, but making the marketplace for these products more competitive is not something we should fear. Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'ai hâte de répondre aux questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Mr. Parker, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that the committee has undertaken a review of this subject and that you invited me to speak. I am the owner of Flexo Products, a Canadian company that's been in Niagara Falls since 1918. I'm the great-grandson of the founder, and my son, who will be the fifth generation, has also joined our company. I have an engineering degree and an MBA from the University of Toronto, and I'm a registered professional engineer in the province of Ontario. My company employs 85 people and is a manufacturer and distributor of cleaning chemicals and supplies to industrial customers. We stock 7,000 products in 7 warehouses. We sell these products to school boards, daycares, health clubs, universities, nursing homes, cleaning contractors, hotels, restaurant, and industry. We are both a manufacturer and a distributor to end user. We make approximately 60,000 deliveries a year on our own trucks. During COVID, my company was on the front lines trying to fulfill the requirements of customers for not only biocides, but also other needed supplies such as hand sanitizers, gloves, and masks. My company has been making registered biocides for over 35 years. We currently have a list of 26 products in the Health Canada Drug Product Database. While the current regulations have been effective over the years, we welcome the development of a new category of regulated products through the creation of a single framework. When our company decides to produce a new disinfectant cleaner, we reach out to various producers of biocidal active ingredients to find an appropriate formula for our needs. These companies, all based in the U.S., own master registrations and have completed all the work to prove to Health Canada that their formula has verified biocidal claims. Our registration documents go into Health Canada together with a letter of authorization from the raw material manufacturer and a proposed label from us, and we wait for our notice of compliance. Upon approval, we buy the main disinfectant raw material and we make the product in our facility. The majority of manufacturers in Canada would not have the resources to make and sustain the necessary biocidal claims without the work that the U.S. companies perform for us. Typical testing to certify a new product costs over $500,000 per product, and there are no guaranteed results. As new bacteria and viruses arise, we rely on these companies to update their claims so that we can update ours. During COVID, as a result of their work, we were able to update labeling on many of our products. The Canadian market needs these companies, and their R&D. We need access to new technology. Most current biocides are made from corrosive and sometimes flammable raw materials, so the push to safer and greener products in our environment requires new technology. There is no shortage of Canadian manufacturing capacity to make the end-use product. Our company and many of my competitors in Canada have highly scalable facilities. Our biggest problem during COVID was not that we didn't have the proper products to kill the virus or that we couldn't get the appropriate label claims. In fact, during COVID, Health Canada staff were very responsive, gave us excellent support, and worked overtime to process requests. The real problem was that we could not get enough of the raw materials in a timely manner. We need to consider how to ensure that we get these raw materials should another pandemic occur. The financial impact to Canadian manufacturers of recognizing foreign registration is a dual-edged sword. We need the U.S. registrations and their technologies, but it will come with more U.S. manufacturers selling their products into Canada. It will cause reduction in sales from domestic manufacturers, and the moderately reduced fees to Canadian manufacturers that have been proposed in no way mitigates that problem. I was happy to see that the new regulations propose changes to labeling. I get to see and talk to many end-use customers. I would like to suggest that the labeling of bottles be reviewed with more emphasis on helping the end user. Many users in janitorial positions do not have the education or expertise to fully understand all of the information on existing labels. Current labels are frequently packed with huge amounts of data not needed for the application of the product. In the scope of the new biocides regulation, it was proposed to exclude air sanitizers at this time. During COVID, one of the major requests from customers was to help them sanitize rooms through the use of handheld sprayers. Huge amounts of sanitizers were sold for this use, and it is a potentially dangerous operation to perform without proper safety standards. Should another similar pandemic arise, there will be countless people once again wanting to do this, and I would suggest regulations on air sanitization be reviewed as soon as possible. I appreciate the time you have afforded me, and I look forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parker. We will now go to the members. Mr. Martel, for 6 minutes, please.
Oui, merci.
Thank you very much to the witnesses for being here today. For Mr. Côté, from what I understood from your testimony, or rather by Health Canada, the standards that Canada follows are international standards. Can you elaborate? Because that's what I had understood. The efficiency of products is not going in Canada. The efficiency is the same. So bleach in Canada is just as efficient as bleach in Europe or in the US. But the problem is that right now, Canadian companies are not registered. We're not asking the Canadian companies to register their product in the same way that it's being asked of American companies. It's not efficiency or quality that's the issue. It's the process that's the issue. So when Health Canada says the processes are similar, it's not true. It's false. They are very different, even for similar products. So does that have an impact on reciprocity? There is no possible reciprocity because the Canadian system currently and within the proposed framework does not match what's happening in the US or in Europe. So if we include biocides under a similar framework, that would simplify things bureaucratically, wouldn't it? Well, for foreign companies, yes. For a Canadian company who wants to register its product, the burden is the same. Right now, there is no framework. It is new for the entire Canadian industry. What the new regulation is new for Health Canada. In the current industry in Canada, domestically, nobody has those registrations according to that regulation. But Americans and the Europeans do have it. That's what we're saying. We just need to make sure that we let the Canadian industry follow those standards before allowing foreign companies to come and compete here. For a Canadian company who's working domestically, when the new regulation is in effect, first we'll have to do efficiency tests. That's $20, $50, $100,000. It could be very expensive. We have 3 to 12 months to do that. Then we have to table a portfolio or dossier and then pay the fees, which goes into the tens of thousands of dollars. And then we have to wait for a review, which takes about a year. So that's 12 to 24 months, and we've spent $10,000 to $12,000 besides R&D. And then in the United States, they fast track it. It's $3,500, and it's registered in 3 months because they are conforming to certain standards. What we're saying is that before allowing for Canadian dossiers to get here, we need to make sure that the entire Canadian industry catch up. It may take 2 to 5 years. When natural products were created, it took 7 years to manage the backlog. 5 years after a different regulation, we're still emitting registrations. I'm not trying to sling mud to Health Canada. It's just this is the way things are. These processes are complicated and always take longer than expected. That's just the reality. 2 minutes. Mr. Parker. On your website, you say that you build or that you produce cleaning products. Is that correct? This new regulation will, of course, impact you directly.
Yes, it will.
Can I know how that will impact your capacity for innovation?
Yeah, at our size, we use third parties, generally out of the U.S., that have registrations in Canada. And so we do not invent new products. We take existing products and we, as do maybe 80 to 90% of the people in our industry, do this same thing. We take products that have been registered and we market them. So the regulations, for us, the new regulations, will just be something that we will follow, and we will adapt to that. Yes, that's what I would say.
I don't have much time left, but I have another question. After COVID-19, do you think that Canada is in a good position to fill those gaps? In the sense that if we wanted to be more independent, do you think that Canada would be able to do that?
So, do you mean, can we put out the liters of product that we would need for another pandemic? Yes, I believe that there is Canadian manufacturing capacity. There's no issue with that. The issue is getting the raw materials we need during a pandemic, and that was the problem in the last one.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Aria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Parker, thank you so much for coming, and your family is quite motivational, I should say. That is the 5th generation, you said. I think instead of thanking your grandfather, you, etc., I should thank your son for taking over the business. We need more manufacturing here. Just to summarize some of the things you said, that you don't invent new products here, possibly because of the economies of scale or because of the technical complications involved. That's my understanding. Correct me later if I'm wrong. And you also said about 80% of the Canadian manufacturers get the products that have been developed elsewhere and manufactured here. And you also said the testing cost about $500,000, and there's no shortage of manufacturing capacity here in Canada, but the problem you faced during the pandemic was the availability of raw materials. if all these things, my understanding is correct, and your major suggestion, I think that's very important for the committee to review, is that in the labeling, we should focus more on the end user, depending on, because the knowledge gap that may be there at the end user who actually uses the product. So that is my understanding of what you said. My question to you is two things. One, Mr. Cote said that Canadian manufacturers need more moratorium. Because 80% of the Canadian manufacturers use the products that are already being invented elsewhere, do you think that long moratorium is required?
So to begin with, just to clarify, we invent new products, and we have development chemists for that, but we don't invent new disinfectant cleaners. Okay. I think that personally, I think that the time frame is very tight. I know that Health Canada did a great job during COVID turning things over, and in the nicest way I can say this is they've slowed down on their approvals now. I'm sorry. Not disinfectants. I'm not allowed to do that. I don't have that, because selling into the U.S. currently requires EPA, and I don't have that.
Are you suggesting, as Mr. Cote, I think, suggested, that we need reciprocity with EPA?
Yes, but, well, it would be very hard to sell products into the U.S. because it's not only the chemical side of it or the EPA, it's also the logistics side, but it's the legal side. It's the way they look at all their states individually. So you have to get a registration in each state instead of like Canada.
Thank you. I got a quick question, Mr. Coles. Why didn't you participate in the consultations now that you're here as a witness?
I think that's because our membership does not produce biocides.
But why are you here then?
Well, in this case, the parallels between what we deal with and what our members are producing and trading.
Okay, Mr. Bergeron, you did mention that you like science-based regulation. Is there anything in the regulation which is not science-based?
We're not here to come to talk about the details of that regulation.
No, you mentioned that you say in your
Yeah.
testimony you said science-based regulation.
Yes.
Is there anything in the current regulation that is not science-based?
I don't know about this particular regulation.
Okay, thank you. And you also said that we had to align with the like-minded countries like the EPA. Do you know under President Trump, EPA changed, revoked, reversed more than 100 regulations, including the Clean Water Act? Do you still 100% trust the EPA when it comes to regulations?
I think it's something that we have to review on a case-by-case basis, and when it makes sense, when a country that the approach is
This
science-based.
regulation says that the friendly countries, that is basically the EPA, they say that if you register there, you are good to use here. Where that does case-to-case basis comes now.
In terms of looking at regulations, I think we have to be very careful on how we approach aligning with other jurisdiction, or even in this case, leveraging decisions. We have to make sure that we're meeting the same level of protection, and that the system or the regulation itself is based on the same science-based principle.
Mr. Harrington, you mentioned the exports doubled because of the change in regulation, you said? Changing Canadian regulations that helped Canadian manufacturers to export?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And you also, when you first talked about more competition, innovation, consumer's choice, these are the kinds of words I hear when people want more inputs to come in. I also hope that you speak for the domestic manufacturers too.
Well, 100%. And thank you for the question. That's precisely what my point was, is that was an example of where modernized regulations made Canadian manufacturers' products more attractive outside the country and actually created export opportunities.
Okay. Thank you. And
23 seconds remaining.
Okay. Last question to Mr. Parker. Is there anything else that we should focus on in addition to changing the labeling, as you mentioned?
don't know how we do it, but I think it's important that we have some sort of pandemic response where we're guaranteed certain amount of raw materials, because I had products turned around at the border that I thought I was getting, and the border said, no, these products aren't leaving the U.S. And the same thing's going to happen whether it's U.S. manufacturers or Canadian. Products aren't going to come into Canada in the way that we're going to need them.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Merci.
Mr. Savard-Tremblay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses. Mr. Coté, quick question. We received, or rather there was an association that presented testimony last Tuesday. A colleague from across the way said that it was quite complicated, this relationship with American companies, because they have a much bigger volume. What is your clientele? I'd say 90% are small Quebec companies that are dealing with the domestic market. We also heard Health Canada officials say that if there is an identical protocol, then the process is identical. You're saying that's not the same and that there are longer delays. Maybe you want to add some information to that. Can you tell me more about any comparison between the United States and Canada? Can you explain that and elaborate on that? If we talk about reciprocity, for example, and registration and certification, then we tend to think that it's all identical. Well, no, there's a lot of confusion there. I heard Mr. Cannings on Tuesday, who I think that's why there's some confusion. In Canada, we put all our eggs in the same basket. We applied the regulations for drugs to all of the products, and those have to do with the pharmaceutical industry. That's how disinfectants are categorized. So contrary to the EPA or the European Union and other jurisdictions, in Canada, we don't evaluate the raw materials that go into the products. There is no toxicology evaluation, or other evaluations are also lacking. We will look at the quality of a disinfectant as though it's a drug, so something that might actually prevent a disease. That's how we think of it, not as something that might actually make things more hygienic or make a surface cleaner. That's where the difference is. So from Canada, we can't sell our products to the United States because our regulation here prevents us from doing so. Let's look at other G7 countries. What is going on there? Well, that's essentially Europe, and it's more or less the same thing as in the United States. They do an exhaustive evaluation of raw materials. They make sure that everything is adequate with regards to the environment and so on. And then they will do an evaluation for the product as a whole. In Canada, we do the same process as we do for drugs. So we can't go ahead. The regulations are just too different. You talked about cleaning surfaces that are in contact with food. That's a category of products that is essential. I go to food processing plants, and I've been doing that for years. There are employees who work all night to clean the plant, and they do finish at 4 in the morning, for example. And then there are inspectors who inspect the site at around 7 in the morning before leaving, or before rather starting operations. All surfaces have to be devoid of sanitizing agents. And so right now, there is no way to apply that. But if we do the same thing in a food processing plant in the United States, that product that is used in the morning is under the EPA's jurisdiction. So what we're saying is we just need the Canadian industry to have enough time to register its products for it to catch up. Once we follow those standards, all the products will be evaluated according to the same standards, and then we can maybe let foreign products in. I don't understand why Health Canada was looking at it that way. It looks more like inspection agency. Well, the EPA is the equivalent of the PMRA, and their laws are much more similar to those the anti-parasite laws we have here in Canada. Shouldn't this all go through a legal process? Well, about 20 years ago, before I started my career, there was an argument or between the PMRA and Health Canada and the inspection agency, and since then the disinfectants in Canada are considered a drug because they prevent diseases. So what officials told you on Tuesday is that they are treating a surface so that a disease is not transmitted to a Canadian. And that's at the basis of Canadian regulation and doesn't match up with what's going on in G7 countries and in the United States.
Tremblay?
Oui.
Thank you. Yes. That's...
On a pu enregistrer la dernière réponse? Ça va.
I'm sorry, we didn't get to the last question.
Okay, we got that. Thank you. Okay, on to Mr. Cannings for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for being here, and especially thank you to Monsieur Côté for coming here again. Glad to hear it. And you pointed out that, I think you pointed out that I was confused on Tuesday, and I think maybe we all were in some ways. I don't want to, I admit that I was confused, and I think you've helped clear up that confusion, because what we were hearing on Tuesday was that, you know, there was some unfairness between American and Canadian companies trying to register their products, and that the American companies apparently had an advantage because they were already registered through the EPA, whereas Canadian companies, you know, had to register their products here or had to get them approved. And, you know, my initial thought to that, as you heard, was, well, they had to do it through the EPA, we have to do it through our way. How is that unfair? But and again, clear up my confusion. So what you're saying here today is that those companies here in Canada have not had to register their products until now. So this is a new thing. We've been just selling products that weren't approved in any way, and they had to approve it, and that's where they're ahead of us?
Not exactly. There are some disinfectants are regulated in Canada, period. So we carry it in, and you get to demonstrate and register your product, but not according to the new rules. The new rules align to the rule that already exists in the U.S. That's the problem. Le problème, c'est que le règlement.
The issue is that the regulation as proposed is aligned with what is already in the United States. So we have a certain process right now, but it's not equivalent to what's in the United States. So what we're asking of our companies right now is different from what the new regulation will be asking, and that one is aligned with what's happening in the United States, and that's where the issue is. That is the only issue. Once everybody will be following the same standards, then we will have other discussions and other technical issues that we can address. But the major sticking point in which we think requires a moratorium is that Canadian companies need the time to catch up to their own regulation, because right now we are not aligned with the U.S. regulations.
Facing that they have to do some extra work, and that's where they need to catch up.
Oui, puis du côté des États-Unis.
The United States and the G7 don't have to do that work because those regulations are already well in place.
A very naive question, and because I know nothing of this, you talked about the differences between the process of registering your products and et cetera here in Canada, that it was a lengthy process. It cost a lot of money, whereas you seem to say it was a much cheaper and shorter process in the United States.
No.
Oh,
The process is, I will never comment the process in the U.S. Le processus pour un produit américain.
The process for an American product for which we are asking registration in Canada means that that product is already registered in the United States. The regulation, that means that we will be able to regulate the product at cheaper costs in Canada.
so it's the process now that if we go to allowing products that have gone through the APA process, that process of getting it into Canada is cheaper and shorter than the Canadian process, not the EPA process.
Oui, c'est ça. Si on prend un produit des États-Unis.
Indeed, if you take an American product and bring it to the United States, as long as it's respecting the regulations, it'll happen much quicker. So we're talking about $350,000 instead of $12,000, for example.
Mr. Parker, I'm just wondering if you could comment on all this, because if I understand it, your company does similar things to the companies that Mr. Cote is involved with. Are you concerned about the way things are set up in this new regime?
So my concern is just the timeline. So in the long run, it's going to be less expensive for us. We're going to have access to new things easier. In the short run, I worry that companies in Canada will still be trying to get registrations, take their old registrations and get the new version of them, that won't have been done, and the U.S. people will be coming in, and it'll only take them 3 months.
So you have the same concerns that Monsieur Cote has?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not 100%, but mostly, yes.
Okay. I'm gradually getting there. And Mr. Harrington, I'm just wondering about, you represent a large sector. We've been talking about reciprocity here. We're allowing registrations through the EPA to be used. How serious do you think this reciprocity issue is? Should Canada be seeking reciprocity when going into regulatory changes like this before they happen?
There's nothing I would love better than to see FDA allow the use of foreign decisions such as those by Health Canada. I want to correct one thing, though, however, over 50% of our members are small SMEs. But yes, I think if we want to look at it purely from a trade point of view, that the industry would love to see the same kind of use of foreign decisions happening from the United States. But that's not a reason from a consumer standpoint. That's not a reason to not encourage that and not to provide leadership, frankly. And other countries, we're not alone in this approach.
I just want to make sure, I didn't mean you just represented big companies. You are a big organization is what I meant.
Thank you very much,
I'm
Mr.
done.
Cannings.
Thank
On to Mr. Baldinelli for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here, and thank you to Mr. Parker for agreeing to come from Niagara Falls. Flexo has been a long-established company in the riding of Niagara Falls, and thank you for your continued confidence in having your manufacturing and distributing company located in our riding, which, and your company which employs 85 people. I asked that you be one of our witnesses and asked that you come forward because I thought that you could bring that unique perspective of both the distributor and manufacturer perspective and, a smaller sized enterprise. And, in our conversations, and I think it kind of builds on what my colleague, Mr. Canning, and maybe to some degree, Mr. Cote was talking about. You had indicated some of the concerns that you may have with regards to clearing those registrations with Health Canada. Once these regulations are posted, it comes into effect in a year. Now, do you have those concerns that with regards to backlogs and getting re-registrations in time as opposed to, simply just bringing in product?
I do, and I'm not a regulatory expert. I'm I know that it takes longer than it should right now, and I'm like there could be as many of as 1,000 or 700 to 1,000 sanitizers that are not currently registered that would need to be registered under this new law, and I think it's still positive because in our world sanitizers are kind of out there. They're not registered well enough. Disinfectant cleaners are registered very well. Sanitizers are not. It needs to be done. It's just that there's a lot of work that would have to be done.
Now, quickly, you'd and also in our conversations, you know, the updated regulations and the use of the foreign decisions pathways, for example, it would allow for, I guess, an easier method to bring in new products. But there's also, in previous testimony from some other witnesses, they talked about it'll allow for easier processes for those that want to sublicense and bring in raw materials, such as yourself. And I was wondering if you could explain how that process works and how that assists you as you develop your products.
Sure. Well, I guess a really good example is that when I realized I was coming here today, I reached out to some industry people that I know, and one of them was a company that we buy raw materials from out of the U.S., and we have a very good relationship with them. And they said to me, there's at least 2 or 3 different products that they know that my business could sell and do a great job with, but they're currently not registered in Canada, and their company has decided at the time being it wasn't going to be worthwhile. So with the new registration, and these are unique products, and in our industry, with disinfectants, we talk in terms of what does it kill, you know, what germs does it kill, and how quick does it work. And if you have a product that works in 2 minutes versus 3 minutes, you have an advantage in the marketplace. And that's the sort of work, products that would be available to us, and they're in the U.S. market, and we need those. We need those.
Quickly, Madam Chair, how much time left?
In 1 minute, 15 seconds.
Mr. Parker, you had talked about labeling issues as well, and I don't think that's gotten enough conversation and coverage. You're saying the rules that exist currently are asking for too much data for the end user typically. I mean, could that information just be supplied as, you know, the material data safety sheets instead, as opposed to the labeling itself?
So the rule of thumb was that if you had product on your data sheets, you needed to have that same information on your labels. And it doesn't make sense, because when that was put into place years and years ago, there wasn't the access to the internet that there is now. So we don't need all the information. You know, when you get a drug from the pharmacy, it says, take one twice a day. You know, I wouldn't say that we have to be that simplistic, but I feel that now there's too much information definitely for end users.
Well, and ultimately the workplace would then have those material data safety sheets for the employees on site to reference to. But again, I mean, for ease of use for that person who needs it, they just need to know what it is, where they can use it, what it's for, and then later on, if they want to check more detail, they can do that.
That's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baldinelli. On to Ms. Fortier for 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today, especially to talk about this topic, which is very interesting to all of us. Mr. Harrington, during your opening remarks, you said that we were on the right track with regards to modernization, the regulation, and registration. When you say that we're on the right path, that means that maybe there are certain things that we can improve. Maybe there are ways that we can encourage exports or other measures. I'd just like to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you had 2 or 3 elements that you could improve? Thank you for the question. I will answer in English just to be more efficient.
This type of efficiency, this type of leveraging of other decisions, from other trusted regulators. I work in a world where our members also manufacture drugs, for example, and natural health products. And if I think folks had a better understanding of how often the same data gets reviewed for multiple products in multiple jurisdictions and arriving at the same outcome, the impetus there is not just in terms of market access, which of course from our perspective is the important issue. It's also about the resources being churned up in government. It's about also the opportunities to perhaps for regulators to specialize, right? So the idea that rather than everybody doing the same thing over and over and over again, that regulators who are collaborating and cooperative can find ways of reducing just the amount of duplication that happens in that space. So I guess that's the general principle that I would point to that we'd love to see.
Croyez-vous qu'il y a beaucoup de lourdeur administrative?
Do you think that there's a lot of red tape for companies? And if that's the case, how do we reduce the red tape? If I understand correctly, there are also high costs that make these companies pay for registration. Sometimes it's challenging for exports and selling the product.
Cumulative regulatory burden is one of the things that I think we need to spend more time looking at. For example, we're talking right now about the biocides regulations, but the manufacturers of these products are also dealing with new regulations from ECCC around recyclability. We're also dealing with new regulations around packaging materials and pollution reduction. All of those initiatives don't necessarily align. And so manufacturers are put into very challenging positions, and the lack of stability, the lack of predictability. You're in the middle of taking on a project. For example, right now there's a whole relabeling initiative for natural health products underway, and halfway through the implementation exercise, ECCC is now saying we're going to have to put new labeling information on the front pack of the product label. So now that whole relabeling exercise has to go back, take a step back, and so there are a lot of different examples like that we could point to where there is this whole concept of the cumulative burden. It's not just any one exercise or one regulatory framework. It's the number of overlapping regulatory frameworks that the industry is dealing with.
Monsieur Côté,
Mr. Côté, I appreciate you returning today. I think it's important for us to hear what you have to say. I had the privilege of speaking to your colleague after our last meeting. Here's what concerns me about the moratorium. It could take a lot more time to implement. There's a lot of pressure. Do you have any other suggestions that you might make that Health Canada can undertake in order to make the access a bit easier for companies that want to conform to the regulations so that they can export their products? Well, there aren't a million ways to approach this. The Canadian industry has to sell apples, and the American industry also has to do the same thing. That's the only way for us to be on the equal footing. If we are not starting the race at the very same starting line, then we can't have similar results. The moratorium, we're asking for it for a couple of reasons. There are 4 steps. It takes about 12 to 24 months to register a product when things go smoothly. Right now, we know that there are 700 to 800 products that are not registered. We did provide that information to the Health Canada officials. They themselves archived those lists because they were the ones managing it previously. We showed them, and they don't believe us. Every day I go to food processing plants and I send approval files to Health Canada, and I see Canadian entrepreneurs every day who need this help. And we don't need to go through this process because it does it itself.
Sir Savard Tremblay, please.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cote, you talked about this moratorium. Why 2 years? And what would that change? How will this situation change in 2 years for your partners and members? That would be the time it would take to do the appropriate studies for the new regulations, to provide a request and then get Health Canada's answer. So if everything goes smoothly, if there's no labor shortage at Health Canada, when there are no technical issues and there's no communication issues, it would take 2 years to register a product. Here's what we're saying. There is a large quantity of products that are not currently identified as disinfectants from Health Canada. It's not because they're not on the list, it's because they are not registered. I can give you names of products to support what I'm saying. You said earlier there was a lack of consultations with regards to Health Canada, and you said that you sent documents and that they know what they're doing. On Tuesday, they told us that they were being transparent, that everything had been published in the Gazette. How many gaps were there during this process? I don't know. I don't know their process nor what officials consider a consensus. But since 2016, I have participated in many discussions with Health Canada and other stakeholders. Since the beginning, we have been raising our hand and saying that this moratorium is necessary. We need the industry to catch up. It's not true that the current Canadian regulation, nor the one that is proposed, is equivalent to the American one. It's simply not true. I think that you demonstrated that, but it's shocking that they turned a blind eye to your presentation. How much time? 20 seconds. Well, I will wait till my next turn. Thank you.
Mr. Cannings, 2.5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go back to Mr. Parker. And you've been talking off and on about the pandemic and how things changed, what went well, what didn't. But toward the end, you mentioned this, the fact that when we started, everybody was washing their hands and wiping every surface down, wiping their groceries down, their newspapers and everything. And then we discovered that it was more of an airborne situation, and you talked about people wanting basically sprays to deal with the air. I'm just wondering if that is still the best situation, or, we've been hearing toward the end of the pandemic was more about filtering. Is there products that you sell or produce that are combined with filters for airborne diseases like COVID?
We do. If I had to guess, I would say that this room, 2.5 years ago, between meetings, assuming you were having meetings, someone would come in after a meeting at 8 o'clock at night and don his garb, put all the, if he was smart, and put all his PPE on, and he would spray the entire room with sanitizers. And the product would go into the air, and then it would land on the surface, and then theoretically it would disinfect or sanitize the surface. And the amount that was done during that period was incredible. The amount of rooms and stuff, and there were still people doing it a couple months ago. So in what I read in the Gazette, it said that for now, the air sanitizing was going to be put aside. So, there's only so much anyone can do at one time, but I just wanted to urge people that it's a definite issue, that if it comes up again, should we get something like that, people are going to want to do the same thing. The filtration, the units that we sell and other people sell for filtering the air, they do a great job, not just for COVID or something like that, but just to improve air quality that we all breathe. So that's I think the air filtration is a positive thing that's come out. The other is a real thing. People are going to want to spray rooms again if they think that there's people inside that have had COVID or whatever it is.
And that spraying function more to clean surfaces rather
It's for
than the air.
Yes. It goes into the air, and then it's the way of getting into the nooks and crannies and all this. There's no other way you could do it because you couldn't wipe them all.
Okay, thank you very much. On to Mr. Seaback for 5 minutes, please.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to just quickly go back to some of the things that you spoke about today, Mr. Parker. So you said that 80 to 90% of the Canadian industry uses formulations from the United States. And I guess my question then would be, would the UFD be useful then if you're getting your formulations from the U.S. That have already been approved in the U.S., any new formulation, I would assume then, can go on this new 90-day approval track. When I look at that and I look at what you've said, it would seem to me that these new proposed regulations will actually be a benefit to the industry. Would you agree with that?
That's my opinion in the long run, yes.
In the long run, yes. Okay,
yes.
Great. Now, this re-registration process that you've talked about, is that going to be a complicated process? And if so, is there any way to streamline that process in your mind? And Mr. Harrington, if you want to jump in on that as well afterwards.
To be honest, I thought it was. I spoke to some people this morning who said that there are plans in place to make that re-registration dramatically easier.
So right now, you'd say you don't have huge concerns about the re-registration process. Some, but not huge.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Harrington?
Yes, Health Canada has the capacity, has ways of dealing with transitions like this. So it can be a risk-based compliance and enforcement mechanism for existing products, or in fact, in more, in situations where the transition is more dramatic. We've even seen things. There was reference to how long it took to get the natural health product regulations in place. There was an interim regulation created that provided for exactly that transition, that sort of said the existing products on shelves can be considered authorized until such time as they're fully licensed. So there are tools available to Health Canada, absolutely.
Have they put in a time frame for this re-registration process, like 90 days? Once you submit for this re-registration, they'll be processed within 90 days, or has Health Canada not put any timeline on this re-registration process?
Performance standards for those reviews, I don't have at the tips of my fingers, I'm sorry, but that's something we can follow up with.
There is a performance standard.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. The other concern that I think I've heard at the committee is that with this re-registration process and this new streamlined UFD, there could be a real crunch at Health Canada to get everything done, and it could create some chaos in the industry. So I think I'm going to go and ask Mr. Parker for your thoughts, Mr. Harrington for your thoughts, and Mr. Cote for your thoughts on that.
That's a fear I have, and I'm worried that there's theoretically a new U.S. company could register in 3 months, and my current registrations won't be processed yet. The re-registrations.
Okay. Yep.
Yes.
That's a good concern. Mr. Harrington?
Health Canada has to plan for this transition.
Yep.
And we've seen it sometimes go well, and we've seen it other times not go so well.
Okay. Mr. Cote?
Un peu dans la même vague.
More or less the same. Health Canada showed us the worst case and best case scenarios. The industry just has to be able to act on its own territory.
So if you were to have the opportunity to say, Mr. Seaback, we would love to see this kind of a recommendation to Health Canada on how to make sure we don't have this sort of giant backlog that creates challenges for the Canadian industry, how would you shape that recommendation? Would they have to have the appropriate resources ready, something like that?
Appropriate resources in place and the appropriate processes, so they can process some applications in batches. There are a variety of tools they have, but that the committee, I think, would be very helpful in highlighting the need for a plan.
Okay, great. Mr. Cote, you agree with that?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Would there be a recommendation you'd say the committee should put forward to the government on this so that we don't have this giant backlog of Canadian re-registrations and new American registrations through the UFD?
Tout ce qui a été discuté tantôt par mes collègues.
According to what we said earlier and what my witnesses said, these are very good approaches. These are just different approaches to a moratorium. We need transitory measures and delaying the implementation of existent measures. Those are forms of moratorium, so I can't be against such initiatives.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Sheehan for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much to all our presenters. And I guess my first question, and I'm going to go to, and I was amazed too to hear about the business being a fifth generation business. That's quite a remarkable feat. And where I'm from in Northern Ontario, in Sault Ste. Marie, the Ojibways and a lot of First Nations think this way, that when they have discussions like this, when they arrive at decisions, they try and figure out how it's going to affect 5 generations down the way. And, you know, in listening to your presentation, it was very thoughtful, not only in the moment and what has happened, but about what Canada ought to do to be prepared, as you said, if another pandemic happens. And, you know, a lot of people have been saying that, yeah, potentially that, we hadn't seen a pandemic like this. You know, people were comparing it to, to the one after the First World War. But people are saying that the way that we live now, that, you know, there is the potential for another pandemic of some sort to happen. So you had mentioned about the supply issue. So I wanted you to sort of drill down and with your expertise, because if you could inform the committee on how Canada could be prepared to have supply on hand. You know, I don't understand your industry that much. I mean, you know, can we stockpile stuff? Is there a shelf life? Is it capacity and manufacturing? So if you wouldn't mind delving into that would be great.
So the stockpiling is very tough because there is a shelf life. So, and it's typically on the raw material. So typically, when we make a disinfectant cleaner that's got 8 to 10 ingredients in it, one of them is the product, 1 or 2 are the products that do the disinfection. They have a limited life. It's generally a year to 2. And so it's problematic to stockpile, just as there are, unfortunately, millions and millions of gallons of hand sanitizer that's out of date, sitting in warehouses all over the world, all over in North America anyway. So a possibility is, could Canada make some of these raw materials? And we make some. We make bleach. We make hydrogen peroxide, which are 2 disinfectants that are used. We make peracetic acid. But some of the other products we probably don't want to make because they're quite corrosive, and no one wants a chemical plant next door to them. So it's a definite problem. To be honest, I don't know how you could guarantee the supply, but it's unfortunately it was a real issue. We were waiting for products to arrive at our facility so that we could make the finished product.
What about the breweries, the microbreweries in a lot of communities across Canada that changed their manufacturing of spirits, to making hand sanitizer? Would they then still have the same issue of trying to get a hold of those materials to manufacture, or I'm just trying to drill down on that one, sir.
In that case, it was alcohol that did the disinfecting, and they were able to produce it. So that was a very good situation for them. Those products were generally horrible, but they were timely. And there are disinfectants that are used, disinfectant cleaners that have alcohol. Not currently made in Canada, though. They are made in the U.S. So it's a good example, but it's again, it was timely, but it was because of the alcohol only.
So the strength wasn't as high as the other ones. The other issue that you just identified that I think that we need to also note is if there are these products that are expired, and they're sitting in warehouses, it concerns me that that somebody, a bad actor, might distribute them and sell them and just, that kind of thing. So any recommendations or thoughts about, that comment and what Canada ought to do to basically take an inventory, if you will, of what's out there, and what might be expired and being sold, whether it is through reputable retail, but I would imagine they have their own processes, but anyone can go online and sell products, right? So, sir, if you wouldn't mind just drilling into that observation.
Could I get a brief answer, please?
During SARS, Health Canada allowed products like Purell to have extended dates. So there's the possibility that could be done.
Okay, thank you very much. We have enough time, Mr. General.
Thanks for making time, Madam Chair. I do want to thank everybody for joining today. I'll ask a little bit about the safety standards first, but then perhaps give at the end of my 5 minutes a bit of time for you, Mr. Coles, and you, Madame Bergeron, to perhaps weigh in on some of the things that you might have heard here. So first of all, I guess to you, Mr. Parker and Mr. Cote, there were some comments made at the last meeting that perhaps the companies using a UFD would be held to a lesser safety standard than Canadian manufacturers. And I think as Canadians listening and watching this committee hearing would be concerned about comments like that. Would you agree with that statement? I'll start with you first, Mr. Cote.
Non, on est définitivement pas d'accord.
We disagree with those kinds of allegations. As I said earlier, a disinfectant that is registered in Canada and used in Canada or in the United States does what it needs to do as long as it's registered. The product itself, as I said earlier, is not what's being called into question. It's the process used to register it and to acknowledge it. It's not about the quality of the product, and it's not about the safety of Canadians. As Mr. Parker said earlier, let's say you have a peroxide-based sanitizer or disinfectant and another one that is registered by Health Canada or made in the United States. The standards make sure that this product will kill the bacteria. It's the registration process that is different.
Sorry, I need you to repeat the question.
No, there were comments made at last hearing. This is day 2 of this, as you may know, and there were comments made that perhaps companies using a UFD would be held to a lesser safety standard than that of Canadian manufacturers.
So I wouldn't believe that to be true. There's no reason for that.
Okay, great. And just want to, again, make sure that those listening in and watching in know that there are 3 in particular points as part of this regulation that are put in there to help with ensuring that they're held to a high safety standard. And I'll just quickly read 2 of them. One's to meet the standards under the UFD pathway. A company must meet several criteria outlined in the regulations, including identical formulation, same conditions of use, same manufacturing process and specifications, and confirmation that the company possesses or has immediate access to all information submitted to the foreign regulator to support approval. And then the second one, the UFD review pathway does not diminish Canadian health and safety standards. Manufacturers and importers who submit applications through this authorization pathway will need to meet all Canadian regulatory requirements, including bilingual product labeling, standardized safety statements, robust incident reporting, and post-market surveillance obligations. With that being said, as promised, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Coles, and Madame Bergeron to provide some summary, perhaps.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, based on the question we received earlier asking about, do we still have faith in the American system as a for instance? It's not about just having faith in the American system, it's about having faith in the Canadian system as well. And we have one of the strongest systems in the world, quite frankly, and if they assess the information they're provided with and decide that that data set is accurate, then we have reason to have faith in that. Furthermore, the point was raised about, how did things maybe evolve or change under the Trump administration? Our exact point is that we don't want political involvement in this process. We want it to be based on science and on facts. It shouldn't be about public perception. It should be about data and making those changes. Is it a question of the current system not being fact-based or science-based? No, absolutely not. But are there options of refining the system, expediting the system, making it more competitive? We hear about it in various jurisdictions, whether it's transportation, whether it's groceries, et cetera. Canadians want lower prices. They want more competition. They want a healthy economic environment. And we're talking to the Trade Committee, and so there's a sensitivity, obviously, to those deals with other countries. And so that is why we are here. We are in favor of something that helps our growers, our companies who very much rely on biocides, among other products, and should have access to those in a timely manner, whether they're produced domestically or internationally.
I cede my time.
Thank you very much. And we have a few minutes left before we get to 12:30. Mr. Aria, do you have any outstanding questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Harrington, thank you so much. Last time I did not have time to...
Mr. Aria, just hold on for a minute.
Why are we going back to the Liberals?
To stop at 12:30.
I understand, but now you've asked another member of the Liberal Party if he has questions or comments. There was Mr. Sheehan and Mr. Generou. You don't go back to one of the previous members, usually.
I went to the next spot, if we do round 3, was open for a Liberal. And that would bring us to the 12:30 time for the end of the meeting. So are you asking to complete the whole round 3? I'm sorry, I didn't have the hearing on loud enough.
Non, pas nécessairement.
Not necessarily. I was just trying to make sure that I understand the process correctly.
Is that all right? Everything will go with Mr. Aria then for a few minutes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Harrington, thank you so much for your presentation. Very well taken. You did mention about the regulatory process duplication. Has your organization done anything that has identified where things can be merged or the duplications disallowed? Is there anything from the industry association done?
There are a number of ways that regulators do that. So one of them is, for example, use of foreign decisions. So there's an element there where pre-market review can be incorporated from a foreign jurisdiction. Most regulatory regimes also have post-market requirements, so things like the vigilance of the product once it's been sold, inspections of facilities, and so on and so forth. There are other ways that we can reduce duplication. So we can have mutual recognition agreements with, again, trusted regulators on specific elements. Might be good manufacturing practices. It might be advertising and labeling, so on and so forth. The amount of duplication that happens as we are in an increasingly, we've all heard this before, interconnected, globalized economy, there are, I think, in the future going to be even more opportunities for cooperation and collaboration between regulators. And there are fora for the various different sectors. So there is the PIPs for pharmaceuticals, there, and so forth, so for different regulatory regimes.
Mr. Anton, Mr. Parker mentioned that it's difficult for his company to export to the U.S. Because of the liability issues and the multiple registration required at the state level. Your members have also been exporting. I don't know which market they export, what product categories they have. Can you comment on that, the requirement of multiple regulatory approvals required in the U.S.?
It varies by country. The U.S. is a good example. It depends on the sector. Because these products are used in the American Federation works a little differently from ours. So jurisdiction can shift depending on the setting. So for sanitizers that are used in a manufacturing facility, yeah, there's state level requirements that complicate the ability to do business. On the other hand, in the drug world or the health product world, generally speaking, the U.S. very much operates at a national level. Those are really tough problems to solve. I wish I could offer you,
Let's come back to the easiest ones that we can solve. Is there any suggestions you have on the current set of regulation that we are discussing today?
I think this regulatory proposal maximizes a lot of the opportunity that's available. If we're looking at the United States, one of I think the beauties of the regulation is that the list of trusted foreign regulators is ambulatory. That means it can be amended. We can add to it. And there are other jurisdictions where that fit might be a little different, and that would offer more opportunities. So, for example, EMA, the Eurozone, that might look different and create even more opportunities for Canadian manufacturers.
I mean, by nature, regulation can be changed quickly. That's the purpose of the regulation, unlike an act of parliament.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Arya. We're at the 12:30 point today. All right, thank you. Thank you to all everyone's questions. They more or less got the information. There's no outstanding questions. So we will move forward. Thank you very much to the witnesses. It was valuable information from each and every one of you today. So we very much appreciate that. We will excuse you from the meeting today. Okay, all these rules. good thing. If it isn't, let me know. Ms. Fortier.
Yes, Madame la Présidente.
We are, yes, we're in open session because I anticipated these to be brief, so I did not go in camera. I anticipate these two issues to be quick. If they're not, and the committee wants to go in camera, we can do that.
Did you want to start? And then I just had an idea I wanted to share with you, but I'll let you start first.
It's okay. We're scheduled for, we just want to confirm next week's meetings. We have the minister coming and officials on Monday.
So we have ministers and officials coming on what?
On the Ukrainian free trade study. I'm suggesting we do a pre-study.
Well, okay, well, we never talked about that.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to
That's why
talk.
she wanted the floor to talk about it.
I just didn't know if you had an introduction. Madame Chair, I just wanted to, I'm going to switch in French. It's easier for me.
That's fine.
Alors, Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, here's what I'm hearing. The minister will be available to come meet us with her officials next week. That is why I wanted to see if it's possible to start the pre-study on the bill on C-57 on the implementation of the agreement between Canada and Ukraine so that we can start working on the pre-study. The process is advancing in the House of Commons. It would allow the committee to study this issue that is very important, and maybe we can combine their presence because the minister will be available with her officials next week, but we could have 4 meetings for the pre-study. So I just wanted to know if I should table an official motion in order to make sure that we can debate it.
I believe the clerk would require, unless everybody's in agreement, I think the clerk requires some level of a motion there to proceed. So you're suggesting that we proceed with the pre-study?
What I'm suggesting is for us to just start the work already by starting the pre-study for the next 4 meetings, knowing that the minister and the officials are available next week. So I think that we should start next week for the pre-study of Bill C-57 on the implementation of the commercial agreement between Canada and Ukraine for 4 meetings.
Discuss that. Mr. Tremblay's got his hand up.
I just want to ask some questions. I'm not against it out of principle, but we know that the agreement will be adopted after the first reading, and the principle will be agreed upon. So the idea of a pre-study is not in vain, because I don't think this is hypothetical. This risks being adopted. However, I want to make sure that we are not adding sessions and meetings once the bill is adopted after the second reading. I don't want us to start all over again doing the study. I want the pre-study to be considered. At some point, I think 4 meetings is ample time to talk about an agreement that is not very restrictive to begin with and that is short and simple. So I think that 4 meetings is sufficient. Should we agree that once the bill is on the table that we go and do the clause by clause and we don't extend the study forever ad nauseum, especially that we can't amend it. It will say more or less the same. So there won't really be any bad surprises with regards to what we'll be looking into.
Whatever we've done this before. Whatever we have gathered from a pre-study is then applied to the actual legislation when it gets here. I have Mr. Seaback and then Mr. Aria.
So I'm incredibly disappointed with how this has been done here, Madam Chair, by both you and the clerk. So we had talked about that we were going to be studying the economic impacts of the strike at the Port of Vancouver. That was going to be next week. A witness submission was never requested from us. So now here we are on Thursday. with no witnesses contacted to proceed with that study, which is completely out of the ordinary business as to how this committee operates. We've operated this committee in a way where we've treated each other with respect and tried to work on things. So to come in here today and be told that the minister's already been arranged to come on Tuesday to a study that is not before this committee with a piece of legislation that is still in the chamber being debated and bumping our study, which the entire committee agreed would be the next thing we study, and it's been bumped because not a single witness has been contacted. It's now Thursday at almost 1 o'clock. So there was a plan afoot here. The plan afoot was that this was going to happen, and our study was not going to proceed. I find this to be something that I am exceptionally frustrated with. We do not have a bill before us. It is not the job of this committee to deal with the incompetence of the government's ability to manage their legislative calendar in the chamber. We had a committee plan. We agreed, everyone, to this plan. Now, all of a sudden, the plan has been thrown out of the window with no consultation with the committee to somehow suggest that this surprise announcement at committee business, when what we thought we were doing at committee business was to discuss this budget. I find this to be a breach of how this committee has operated. I'm incredibly disappointed. I'm disappointed in you, Madam Chair. We've had a good working relationship, and I don't think this is the way we would treat each other normally. I do not agree to doing a pre-study of that particular piece of legislation because the committee had business we had already scheduled. If that legislation is before us, then of course it would bump a study. But to bump our study, which is an important study, that we all agreed was important, we all agreed would go right after we finished Mr. Savard Tremblay's biocide study, I think this is a big problem, and this is not how this should have been done.
Mr. Arya.
Madam Chair, if you are going to take this up, I agree with Mr. Savard Tremblay that we should not extend the number of sittings for that particular study because that is an important legislation. If it gets through, it has to go through it as quickly as possible.
I believe I have Mr. Genero next on the list. And then I have Mr. Baldinelli, and then I will respond to Mr. Seaback.
Sure, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think your comments at the beginning that this was going to be a quick one, I don't think are necessarily accurate at this point in time. So I don't sit on the subcommittee, but we all received a report from the subcommittee, and I thought there was a lot of goodwill when we talked about the ability to talk about the supply chain issues that we're facing. I think Mr. Sidhu and Mr. Miao's motions were good motions, and I think we kind of came to a good understanding about what that would be. The subcommittee report, to remind everybody, started with this biocides meeting that we had here for I was going to say for Mr. Savard Tremblay, but I think it was actually a pretty good study for everybody to understand that. And then we were going on to the port strike, and I think again that was something that everybody was in agreement with. Again, it was on the subcommittee report that we were doing it. I just remind the committee that the initial motion for that was to include the minister as part of that study. And that study would have been happening Tuesday. We now understand that the minister is free Tuesday, but she's not appearing on this. It's because it's about this pre-study that seems to have jumped the queue, if you will. I think there was a lot of good faith in removing the minister from that and making sure that we're focusing on the government's response and having government officials, and we didn't necessarily demand the minister, as I know have happened in previous committees that I think you and I have sat on together, where we spent a lot of time demanding the minister show up. That wasn't the case this time. I think again it was the understanding that we were going to move directly to the port strike. I know there's been a lot of anticipation from pretty much everybody in this room that we wanted to do it. It was topical. We want to do it sooner than later. So I certainly think this is something that unfortunately won't be supporting to go to this pre-study just because the minister happens to be free when initially we were looking for the minister, the first one. So, I'll leave my comments there, Madam Chair. But again, kind of my first point. I don't think this is going to be a short discussion from your opening comments, and hopefully we can resolve it. Thank you.
I have Mr. Baldinelli, Mr. Cannings, and Mr. Tremblay, and Mr. Martel. I'd like the opportunity to respond. And so I don't necessarily want to wait until the other speakers do. Is it okay with everybody if I respond to the suggestions so that they're understood better where we're going with this? We all know that C57 takes precedence, as Mr. Seeback said, over everything else. It was expected. C57 had to come because we have to deal with it because it's legislation. And then immediate following the 4 meetings that were decided on for C57, we go on to the port study, which is scheduled at the moment for the end of the month, of this month. The delay in the House with getting the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement into this committee due to concurrence motions being tabled, we all know what's going on. So it's been deliberately to delay the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement from moving on. The clerk has to have a schedule, and we expected the legislation to be here, which is why the schedule is the way it is. We did the biocides, the legislation. Normally, the legislation, if it was not for the concurrence motions being moved in the House, would be here. And it was scheduled for Monday. And we had asked the minister as well to be here for the beginning of that study, which is normal. And the schedule worked as well. So it's efficient use of our time as a committee. It's the concurrence motions in the House that are delaying it getting here, because it was scheduled to be debated yesterday and Friday. And we have the 4 meetings, and we immediately go on to the Vancouver port strike that we talked about. That was the plan. That is the schedule that is before us at the moment. Since C57 is not here yet, but it will be at some point, the idea to do a pre-study and then apply that information on so that we can continue on with the schedule that's before us. So there was no meant to be devious anything. The legislation takes precedence. It was the holdup in the House that's preventing it from being here. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Mr. Baldinelli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in terms of bringing forward some issues on this, first of all, we're talking about committee business, and first of all, I'd like to find out why we're not in camera to discuss committee business. At first, you said it would have been a relatively short discussion, so you didn't think it needed to be in camera. But to my colleague's point, I think this is going to be a rather long conversation, and I think it would be the right thing to do that these discussions be held in camera.
So you're suggesting that. All those in favor of going in camera? Okay, we're in camera. Continue. I have to suspend for a moment. Sorry.
Bye.